Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis, they, he, she. And today's pick is Marx by Corinne Maier and Anne Simon, originally published in French in 2013. The edition I read was English. Couldn't see who translated it, published by Nobrow in 2014. Content notes for cheating on your spouse with your employee and having a child who is taken care of by someone else entirely. Also, if I was in a jokey mood, I might say content warning for humor, because leftists, LOL. I feel like picking up this volume, it's good to know that my library shelves it with the young adult graphic novels. Looking at Goodreads, WorldCat, and the publisher's websites, I don't see any indication that this is the publisher's target. But looking at another Nobrow title that has been on my to-review pile for far too long, and is being pushed hard as YA everywhere but the publisher's website, maybe Nobrow just doesn't tag any publications as young adult? ? Anyway, I just wanted to point out this seems pretty clearly focused on a first and fast introduction to Marx, almost certainly originally intended for the youth. So, if you are looking for something not that, don't pick up this book, and avoid joining the heaps of surprised Goodreads reviewers looking for a more serious and in-depth title. While certainly in my wheelhouse, as it were, I would also admit that this is not a volume that would have really jumped out at me most of the time. I initially picked up this particular biography of Marx several years ago when my library's catalog system was down for months on end, and I had to wander around the city, going to random physical locations to see if they still had anything remotely interesting for me to read on hand. It was certainly an interesting time. Keywords that came to mind: economics, migration, cost of living, facial hair, newspapers, and fatherhood. The publisher's summary is, quote, Karl Marx dreamt of a world free from exploitation, inequality, and unemployment. Growing up in a rapacious capitalist society, Marx sought to address the evils of the world through new ways of thinking. His solution? Revolution, end quote. Looking at the creative team, I honestly had no idea whose book I was apparently picking up before I started Googling them. Because while I'm pretty sure I did hear of Maier's book about regretting having children back in 2007 or so, I certainly did not have her name anywhere near the front of my mind. But zooming back out again, Corinne Maier's English website bio describes herself as a, quote, economist, a historian, and a psychoanalyst, end quote. She is French, Belgian, and Swiss, and writes rather prolifically in French. The book she published in 2004 before No Kids was Hello Laziness, Why Hard Work Doesn't Pay. So while I feel like the satirist's choice of titles sound a bit harsh in regards to reproducing, she does seem intriguing. What do you think? And in case you are curious, I do in fact have a very deeply nuanced take on the subject of biological reproduction. TLDR, I think most wholly anti-natalists are silly, and I keep meaning to read more into the abolition of the family. A prolific author/illustrator, while I haven't actually read anything else by Anne Simon, I had apparently bookmarked The Empress Sitsisis and the Song of Agliel, so I should try and get to those sooner rather than later. Simon also won the Young Talent Prize at Angoulême in 2004, and she studied fine arts and decorative arts at institutions I will not insult by trying to pronounce. Focusing back on the book itself, as I already hinted at, pretty light touch. We trot through Marx's life at a pretty quick pace. It's not that complications or detracting facts are not presented, but Corinne appears to not just be called a satirist, but demonstrate a skillfully light humorous touch that keeps things engaging and interesting. Similarly, the art felt like it fit the writing style very well. Easy to follow and varied page layouts made this a very fast read that held onto my attention pretty well. Looking at the intersectionalities and identities as presented on the page, as I always do, on the lightly critical side of things, I do feel like this volume falls into the great men of history rut. Personally, probably because of my particular flavor of leftist politics, I have come to enjoy histories that look a bit wider and see how communities come together, or even fail to do so, to try to make change. We certainly see Marx bouncing off of other people, see his marriage, and see his bromance with Engels. There's some class struggle highlighted in Marx's monetary struggles, but there is more, since the publication of this book at least, that has been said about Jenny, her contributions to Marx's legacy, and the very gendered ways in which both of their lives and legacies have largely played out. Sexuality is, overall, pretty straight, both consensual and abusive. The only serious moments felt like when a number of Marx's children died. Was there perhaps too light a touch applied to Marx sleeping with his apparent one female employee? I don't know. It at least didn't feel downplayed or ignored, and absolutely nothing in this book is lingered on for very long. Race felt largely avoided and ignored, although the religious pressures faced by Karl's ancestors and family felt well outlined in a way I appreciated. Unsurprisingly, it felt like people in this biography were either alive and perfectly well, or sick and then dead. So not a whole lot of nuance when it came to disability. I did feel like the volume did highlight the way that Marx's lack of financial security did directly correlate to the deaths of some of his children, a harsh but all too real reality. So yeah, as I kind of alluded to earlier, a fairly simple and easy to read introduction to Marx's life and philosophies. Certainly a niche worth filling, but a bit light for anyone actually familiar with him already, and fairly bog standard in its approach as far as I can tell. AKA good, but not great, 3 stars. If you want to dig a bit deeper into Marx and Engels in the graphic novel world specifically, I would recommend checking out the Communist Manifesto graphic novel adapted by Martin Rowson, and feel free to drop your recommendations in the comments. By all, keep reading, and remember, all colonial settler states are a lie. And Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.